it's Sam, and today I have a recommendations video for you. I asked on Twitter a couple weeks ago what you guys would like to see, and a lot of you said that you wanted to see some recommendations videos, so I got a couple different genre recommendations asks, but I'm actually planning on doing contemporary today. That's interesting because contemporary is not my favorite genre. I would actually say it's my least favorite genre. I do read it fairly often. All the genres I love, honestly. So I don't really have like a least favorite, but it's not the thing that I most often reach for. But I feel like I really can't go into my fantasy recommendations right now because you guys know I talk about all of my fantasy recommendations in basically every tag video, Top 5 Wednesday, whatever. So I'll just be repeating the same information. So I'm gonna wait till I get some more fantasy recommendations under my belt before I release a video about fantasy recommendations, but I feel like I don't give enough credit to the contemporary recommendations that I do like. So today are all of my favorite contemporaries. And these are in no particular order. I'm just going to pick them randomly off my shelf and talk about the ones I like. The first one is a longtime favorite, and that is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. This is an adult contemporary, and it's actually more on the magical realism side. There is a movie about this. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, but the book is so different than the movie, and I love both of them for different reasons, but I love the book so much. It's everything I enjoy in a contemporary. I say this is more of a contemporary than a fantasy or magical realism, although there are those magical realism elements because obviously one of the main characters is a time traveler. You're dealing less with those fantasy kind of themes and more with contemporary themes of relationships and people and humanity and morality and stuff like that. This book is excellent if you enjoy morally gray characters and realistic characters. This is perfect for you. The characters in here are not black and white. They are completely real, flawed human beings. I still think about them. I loved this book. It completely blew me away. I went into it after I'd seen the movie, not expecting much out of it, and absolutely adored it. I wish the movie was more like this. Like I said, I like the movie for what it is. I saw it first, so I have a special place in my heart for it, and I just love it. But I love this book so much, and I think that it could have been a completely different movie and been completely amazing. Then we have Magnolia by Christy Cook, and this is a Southern YA romance. It follows two teenagers from two families who have been best friends for years, many, many years. They're kind of like two Southern debutante families that have been intertwined for years, and they basically want these two teens to date and have wanted to since birth because they want them to get married and kind of join the families. So it's kind of an anti-Romeo and Juliet story, and it follows some very kind of typical, you know where it's going, but it's so cute. I enjoy Southern romances. Like, one of my favorite movies of all time is Sweet Home Alabama. I just love it. So this had a lot of those just elements of Southern parties and Southern families and the drama and the guys in the trucks, and like, it's just everything that you would enjoy if you enjoy that kind of Southern romance and these two people that kind of get pushed together, and it's just really great. And it's just cute. It's such a cute read. I read it this spring, right as it was starting to kind of like thaw outside, and it was the perfect time for it. It's like a breath of fresh air, and nobody talks about this book, and it's so cute and such a quick read. I absolutely love it. Now these two probably go without saying, but they are two books by Morgan Matson, and that is Amy Rogers' Epic Detour and Since You've Been Gone. I love both of these books. Everybody talks about Morgan Matson, and she is amazing for contemporary. She deals with some darker themes and some realistic situations, but not in a way that kind of makes it feel like it's tragedy porn, basically. I think a lot of darker contemporaries can kind of get into this like tragedy, too much area, and she doesn't do that. She really balances the fine line between stuff being cute and realistic, but darker at times, and just realistic and human, and it's amazing. And she writes books fairly slowly because there's so many things that kind of get interwoven in her stories, and I just love them. I have not read Second Chance Summer yet, which was her first book, but I plan to at some point. I'm putting it off because we don't get another book from her, I think, until next summer, so I'm kind of waiting because I don't want to exhaust all of my Morgan Matson, but she's totally worth the hype. Everybody talks about her. She's amazing. Just pick them up because they're so cute. I started with Amy Rogers' Epic Detour, but you can pretty much start wherever. All of them are great. I love them. Then we have Everything Leads to You by Nina Lacour. This follows a set designer in Hollywood. She's up and coming. She's a teenager, and she kind of is uncovering this mystery after she goes to an estate sale of a deceased former Hollywood legend, kind of like a John Wayne type character. And the great thing about this book is that the main character is an out lesbian woman, and it's amazing. It's such a cute story, but it's also one of those kind of like mystery stories. But it's not so mystery that it's like a thriller or anything where you're like on the edge of your seat nervous. It's just like things are unweaving and different threads are kind of unweaving, and you're kind of following that story. And it's a very different take on a contemporary. It's just a very different story than what I'm used to seeing in contemporary, and I absolutely loved it. Then we have 13 Reasons Why by J. Asher. I listened to this book on audiobook when I listened to it, and I highly recommend the audiobook. It's about a guy who gets sent these tapes that were recorded by a girl that he knew that he committed suicide, and there's this tapes of kind of her story and why she committed suicide and kind of what led up to it. and everybody that's mentioned on the tape, she says, has a part in it, and anyone that got sent the tapes has a part in it. So it's a very dark story, obviously trigger warnings for suicide and depression, but it's an amazing story. It had me on the edge of my seat. I just needed to know what was going on, what was going to happen. I didn't love the ending of it, and I've actually done a review on this, which I will link on the screen if you're interested in kind of more of my thoughts about it, but if you are into the darker, dealing with kind of like mental health type books, this one is a great one, I think. Then we have The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson, and I absolutely adore this book. I think this might be, oh man, if I was to rank them, this would be really very high towards the top. This is about a girl whose sister recently passed away, and she's dealing with the grief of all of that, and it's just an exploration of grief and how different people grieve, and there's a love triangle kind of alluded to on the back. Don't let that put you off. That is not what this is about. There are two technical love interests, but it's not like that at all. Like I said, it is about grief and how people deal with grief and the messiness of human life and of grief, and just, it's a beautiful story, and I was not expecting to be as blown away as I was by it when I first read it, and I plan on rereading this many times, and I'm going to pick up more by Jandy Nelson. I just haven't yet because, again, she's another author that hasn't had a ton of work out right now, so I just am kind of savoring like the little tidbits that she has given us, because this was absolutely amazingly breathtaking, and I adore it. If you were, again, into heavier themes, like I said, trigger warnings for grief and loss and death, but absolutely amazing. Another book that has got kind of mixed reviews, but I fall on the side of really enjoying it, and that is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I also read this book on audiobook and absolutely recommend it. I think the narrator is amazing. It's basically about this family, this rich family, and all of their problems. They go to a summer island because they are that rich every year, and there's things that have happened in the past, and it's kind of flashing back to some of the things that happened and what's going on, and it's kind of this mystery, but it's basically just family dynamics and how messed up families can get, and that everything is not perfect. When you see somebody's situation, you're like, oh, they must have this perfect life. That's not the situation, and it's just an amazing story. I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people went into it expecting something more, I think, and didn't get that, but if you go into it with no expectations, which is what I did, I read it a year after all the hype, then I think you could really enjoy it. I've done a review for this one as well. I recommend checking it out if you were interested, but again, just kind of go into it and see what happens. I absolutely loved it. It's a short book. I flew through it. Absolutely adored it. Now I'll recommend a couple books from the new adult genre. So these tend to be more of these steamier reads. These do tend to have some more sexual content in them, so if you're not interested in that, then obviously these probably wouldn't be for you, but I'm not a big fan of new adult. Admittedly, I'm not. So these are books that I actually do recommend from new adult, which means that I think they are a little something special because, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of new adult from the stuff I read so far. The first book kind of bridges the gap between YA and new adult, and that is Under the Lights by Dahlia Adler. The characters in this are like 18, 19, 20, maybe a little older than that. There's a couple POVs going on in here. So there's two POVs, both following actors in Hollywood. One is a guy whose name is Josh. He's kind of a douchebag, and I grew to like his perspective, but ultimately he is not who I read for at all. The other POV is Vanessa, and she is a Korean-American actress. And she is discovering that the guys that her agent is putting her with to kind of be paparazzi fodder are not piquing her interest at all, and that she may be, in fact, somewhere on the LGBTQ+ spectrum. She does not label herself, so I'm not going to here, but there are two girls kissing on the cover, so it is a romance between two girls in here. Absolutely loved it. I think that the characters in here are written super well. Sometimes you'll have new adult or even like young adult where the characters don't feel like teenagers or don't feel like early 20s or anything like that, and these characters definitely do. I think they had very realistic interactions and realistic thoughts and stuff like that, so I really enjoyed this one. I'm actually reading one of Dahlia's other books right now because I just really love her work and I plan on picking up more by her. She's awesome. I highly recommend picking this one up. Then we have another very popular one, but that is Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. This is about Sydney, who moves in with her neighbor Ridge after discovering that her boyfriend is cheating on her with her best friend and roommate. It's a mess. But this book I loved because Colleen Hoover does tend to kind of fall into the too much tragedy perspective for me. Sometimes I've read one other book by her, Hopeless, that I didn't enjoy, but this one I absolutely loved. I loved the relationship. I loved everything about it. It's about music, and there's like a soundtrack along with it. I've done a full review, which I will link on the screen. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this book before because everybody talks about it, because it is great. It is a really great new adult, fast-paced, and like I said, the romance is like angsty and wonderful, and it's just a really great romance. So if you're interested in something like that, definitely pick this one up. And this one isn't too sexually explicit or anything, so if you're trying to get into new adult but you don't like all of the sexiness that happens with a new adult, I think this one would be good for you. And lastly, we have More Amore by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I gave this one about 3.5 stars, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it. This is a circus romance that takes place in Las Vegas. It's about this girl that moves to Las Vegas to be part of a kind of Cirque du Soleil show. That is her dream, and she meets the lead of one of these shows and kind of starts falling for him. He's a Russian acrobat. Yes, this is a romance. It's steamy, but it's really good. I actually love Krista and Becca Ritchie's writing because one, it's fast-paced. Two, it doesn't have the typical new adult tropes. So if you read new adult and you don't like how abusive a lot of the guys are and how douchey and awful they are and how slut-shaming is prevalent in a lot of new adult and how like there's like the typical new adult tropes. I could go on and on about new adult tropes, but this doesn't really have any of those, and I absolutely loved it. I was flying through it. I didn't personally connect to the romance as much as I could have, but I know that I'm in the minority there. I know a lot of people did connect to it, so if you're looking for a romance and you want a new adult, a little bit steamier, but not too over the top and like not too tragedy or anything like that, I would recommend this one. They also have another series that I'm planning on picking up soon. It's called the Addicted series. Everybody that I know has read it. The whole Wolfpack has read it. A lot of people that I follow on Tumblr love it. So I need to pick it up soon. It's another series that I heard is amazing. So if you're interested, if this kind of piques your interest and you're going to see what other things this author duo has done, the Addicted series, I've heard great things. I already know I'm going to like it. So I'm going to recommend it here, but it'll probably show up in future recommendations videos as well. But if you're interested, check that one out. I realized that I forgot a couple young adult recommendations, so I'm kind of backtracking after the new adult. We have Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. This is another one that everyone has talked about, but it's a very cute contemporary. It's actually the first young adult contemporary I ever read. It's one of the first books that I ever talked about here in my channel. It's about a girl who was sent away to a boarding school in France, and it's kind of like a fun boarding school. It's not like a she's being punished boarding school, but basically she has a dad who's like, you need to be seen at this boarding school, and so she's sent there. And it's her discovering friendships and romance, and some people don't like the romance in this, most people do, but it's very cute. It's kind of a, you know, well, they won't, they what's gonna happen, and it's adorable, very fast paced. I really enjoy Stephanie Perkins' writing. I haven't read her other two books in this companion series. I need to, I just don't own them, and I haven't been compelled to go out and buy them. But there's obviously two other books in this companion series that deal with different characters in the same kind of world that kind of connect but don't really, like, you don't need to read one before the other. You guys probably know this. This is a very popular contemporary book on BookTube, but I had to mention it. It's worth mentioning. I do love it. I do plan on rereading it at some point. It's just one of those books that you can kind of pick up whenever and read because it's just cute and just warm fuzzies. That's this book. We have My True Lukesh Me, which is edited by Stephanie Perkins and has a ton of young adult authors in it. But there are a ton of different stories in here. There are a couple that lean more on the magical realism fantasy side, but there are just a ton of Christmassy contemporary stories. I read it last year on the Christmas season and loved it. I plan on reading some of my favorite stories again this year around Christmas because they're just so cute and so wonderful. And this is a great way to find some contemporary authors that you might enjoy because they're all in here. So if you kind of pick out like, oh, I like this person's writing, then you can get some recommendations for different books to read. So I highly recommend doing this. And there's also going to be another short story collection by Stephanie Perkins coming out in the summer, which I'm so excited about. It's coming out this summer. I cannot wait. This was adorable and just totally put me in the Christmas mood. So I can't wait for that to come out in the summer and put me in the summer beachy mood. It's going to be amazing. It's probably going to be super cute like this is. I had to mention it because this is one of my favorite books on my shelf ever. It's adorable and I love it. And I had so much fun reading these. I realized that I forgot a couple books that I originally read as ARCs because those are on a different shelf. So I have a few more to add. Both of these books have since been released and are available in physical copy now. The first one is Everything by Nicola Yoon. This one has gotten a ton of hype and buzz. I think it came out in September. This is about a girl who is allergic to everything, and so she has never left her house, but one day a boy moves next door and a romance kind of blooms. It's super cute. It's written in a very interesting way because there's like I am conversations and like letters and stuff like that, and so you can really easily fly through it. You can read this book in one sitting. Super cute. I still think about it. It's adorable. And the other one is Every Last Word by Tamara Ireland Stone, and this is about a girl who is suffering from OCD in high school. She's kind of one of those perfect girls. She has like the perfect friends and everything, and she starts to realize that maybe her perfect world isn't helping her out so much, and she starts to kind of branch off and make new friends. So it's beautiful. It's about friendship. It has a really interesting discussion of mental health and a very healthy discussion of mental health and what to do for your mental health, and it's wonderful. As somebody who struggles with anxiety, I thought this was a very accurate portrayal of an anxiety disorder, and I absolutely adored it. Alright guys, that is it for all of my contemporary recommendations. Comment down below and let me know your favorite contemporary, and if there's a contemporary that you feel that I would enjoy based on some of my favorites. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!